Episode 2 picks up 6 months after the death of the queen and the announcement that Rhaenyra will be the heir. In this time, Daemon has set up shop on Dragonstone. He's taken it over, and he's brought his army with him. Other than that, though, no one's really heard from him. As King Viserys is going through court, he gets barged in on by Lord Corlys, who is pissed off. He's now lost 4 ships to the Crab Feeder, and he wants Viserys to do something about it. Otto tells him that he will be reimbursed, but he doesn't want reimbursement because this is just going to continue. And if the shipping lanes close, then he's going to be really screwed. What he asked the king to do is go to the Stepstones, where the Crab Feeder is located, and beat him out by force. But Viserys tells him, I'm not prepared right now to start a war with the Free Cities. And one of the maesters turns to Corlys and reminds him that in 7 kingdoms, no one's ever opened war with the Free Cities. The losses would be too great. And Corlys asks, well, then why would the Crab Feeder even fear us? No one really has an answer to that. Eventually, Viserys tells Corlys, I have acted. I've sent envoys to Pentos and Volantis to see if we could find common cause. Ships and men are at the ready, and the Stepstones will be settled in time. And then, out of nowhere, Rhaenyra, who is over in the corner, says, you have dragon riders. You can send us. Corlys loves that idea. But the king doesn't. He tells Rhaenyra it's not that simple, and then she finds herself getting kicked out of this meeting, mainly at the behest of Otto. She's tasked with going to find a replacement for the Kingsguard. One of the members died, and they have to replace him. Sir Harold Westerling, who seems to be in charge of the Kingsguard, takes Rhaenyra out and shows her the candidates, but she's not impressed with any of them. She finally asks, do any of them have combat experience? And only one does, and it just happens to be Sir Criston Cole. The fact that he has combat experience and the fact that he's not the worst-looking guy in the realm gets him the job. Although, when Otto hears Rhaenyra so quickly say, then it's settled, Criston Cole will be joining the Kingsguard, he tells her to pump the brakes a little bit. Some of the other candidates have more of a relationship with the crown. They're important allies, but she doesn't care about any of that. All she cares about is the fact that Criston Cole will actually be able to keep her father safe. But in the 6 months since she's lost her mother, Rhaenyra really hasn't talked to her father all that much. Her father, meanwhile, has continued to talk to Alicent. Alicent has been stopping by every day and just listening to the king, all his problems. And he asks Alicent for advice on what he should do about his daughter, and Alicent tells him that these things take time. When she lost her own mother, she didn't really feel like opening up. But she does suggest that maybe he go to her, not wait for her to come to him. Right after talking with the king, Alicent goes and meets up with Rhaenyra. They head down to pray for their lost mothers, but Rhaenyra starts venting to Alicent about the fact that it hasn't even been a year, and already the people around her father are trying to marry him off so that they can replace her as heir. And it's not like she feels any loyalty to her dad, because the way she looks at it, her dad didn't choose her. It was more about spurning Daemon. They then sit down and pray for their moms. But as they were praying, the king was having a meeting with Lord Corlys and the queen that never was, Rhaenys. The king explains to Corlys that, as king, it's his obligation to avoid war. And Corlys gives him the cold reality of what the outside world might view right now. They view a king who is weak. The queen is dead. A girl has been named the heir to the Iron Throne for the first time ever. The king's brother has been disinherited and, in turn, claimed the Targaryen seat on Dragonstone unopposed. And now a foreign power has established a colony in the most important shipping lane. Fact is, right now the crown is vulnerable, or at least it's perceived to be vulnerable. So what Corlys suggests to change all this is joining the families and having Viserys marry their 12-year-old daughter who looks more like she's 9. Now, on paper, Corlys' daughter Laena is a perfect match. This would unite the 2 surviving Valyrian houses, and it would allow him to show the realm that the crown's strongest days are ahead of him. The downside of this is she's 12 years old. That doesn't really seem appealing to the king. But he also knows that it's expected of him to take a wife eventually, to continue to try to produce more heirs, strengthen his line, all that. So he agrees to meet with Laena the next day. He then has to go for medical treatment, because he got a nick on his finger from the Iron Throne, and now that's festering. So as he has a bunch of maggots try to clean his wound off, he asks a small group what they think about this marriage to Laena. That small group includes Otto and one of the maesters. Otto brings up the fact that she's incredibly young, which the king already knows. The Maester, however, says that a match with Laena would go a long way towards signaling unity throughout the realm. When the king brings up the fact that he's worried about what Rhaenyra might think, the Maester says, what does it matter? Her mother's passed and you're expected to remarry. Otto, though, tells Viserys that he doesn't envy him because he knows what it's like to lose a wife. And to be forced to remarry and replace her because of duty, that's gotta suck. But the next day, as agreed upon, Viserys goes and he meets with Laena. And this is going to surprise you, but they don't really have a lot in common. All she wants to talk about is this lost dragon that they can't seem to find. And Viserys does his best to give her an update on where they think this dragon might be. But as they walk the grounds and Laena tells Viserys what her father told her to regurgitate, her mother, Rhaenys, and his daughter, Rhaenyra, are watching it. And they're both pretty disgusted. They end up having a conversation about how none of this really sits well with them, but they don't have a choice. It's just the way that it is. Rhaenys tries to give Rhaenyra some advice. After what happened with her, she feels like it's her duty. She doesn't want to get Rhaenyra's hopes too high that she will eventually be queen one day, because the reality is her dad is going to remarry. He is going to have kids, and the odds are one of those kids will be a son, and when that happens, she's going to be pushed aside, just like what happened to her way back when. Rhaenyra, however, takes it as jealousy, because Rhaenyra is getting the chance that Rhaenys never got. But Rhaenys tells her, look, the hard truth is, these guys are never going to let a woman command the realm. Just not going to happen. Later in the day, Viserys gets together with arguably his most trusted advisor, Alicent. He starts telling her about the predicament that he finds himself in, and she does her best to just listen, like she's been doing for the last 6 months at the behest of her father. And in that 6 months, she's made a lot of headway. While it doesn't seem like anything physical's taken place, the king has really taken a liking to her. He finds Alicent extremely easy to talk to. But as he's having a conversation with her, her father, Otto, comes in, and he tells her that he's convened a small council for an emergency session. The king has to come to it immediately. So the king gets up to attend this session where he's told that his brother, Daemon, has stolen a dragon egg. The dragon keeper then hands over a note that was left by Daemon. In the note, it says that Daemon is remarrying to a woman named Lady Mysaria. She's also pregnant, and as is customary, a dragon egg will be placed in the baby's cradle. Daemon is getting married in 2 days, and he has invited the king. But it doesn't seem to be a real invitation. The king doesn't really care about it until he finds out that that dragon egg was the one that was sitting in his baby's cradle. The same baby that died. Viserys gets up and he wants vengeance, but Otto stops him and says, you shouldn't go. Let me handle this. So he agrees to it. He's going to send Otto along with an army. Otto gets ready to leave and he goes to say goodbye to Alicent. He does notice, though, that she has some self-mutilation habits. She picks at her fingers constantly. He might be concerned about the fact that the king might not be into bloody fingers, because right before he leaves, he asks Alicent, are you going to sing the king tonight? And she says, yeah, if you want me to. And he absolutely does. He then heads off to Dragonstone, and he is greeted by Daemon, and who is to be Daemon's new wife. He doesn't know her, but Otto starts calling her things like a whore, and then telling him that he has to get off of Dragonstone, abandon it completely, get rid of his army, and give back the dragon egg. This turns into a complete pissing contest between the two men, one that even Sir Criston gets involved with. But eventually this pissing contest almost results in the two groups fighting. They pull out their swords and they're ready to go to battle until Otto and his group notice that Daemon has a full-on dragon ready to attack. They can't compete with that. That is until Rhaenyra flies in on her dragon. She, however, doesn't want to get into a fight. She just wants to talk. She parks her dragon and walks up to her uncle, and she tells him that he has to go. He's pissed off the king. And when Daemon says, I'm not sure how, I'm just getting married, she points out, you already have a wife. To which Daemon says, yeah, but not by my choosing. She then gets down to what she feels is the real root of Daemon's problem. He's jealous. So she tells him, I'm right in front of you. Go ahead, kill me. If you kill me, you're the heir to the throne. But Daemon isn't about to kill Rhaenyra, throwing the dragon egg at her and walking off. With the dragon egg safely in their custody, Rhaenyra, Otto, and the group go back to King's Landing. But the thing is, Daemon and Lady Mysaria aren't getting married, and she's not with child. Daemon lied in that report, and it really pisses off Mysaria. She tells him, you can afford to play these stupid games with the king, but I can't. I didn't come here for gold or power. I came here to be liberated from fear. So now his wife doesn't like him, and neither does his mistress. Back on King's Landing, though, the group hasn't arrived yet when the king needs somebody else's thoughts on this whole marriage situation. So he goes to one of his trusted advisors, a guy named Lord Lionel. He asks Lionel's feelings on the situation, and Lionel realizes just how young Corlys' daughter is, but he also realizes that Corlys is going to be pissed off if the king doesn't marry his daughter. And the relationship between House Targaryen and House Velaryon could be incredible. It's one nobody would really want to trifle with. So his advice is to marry her. After all, Corlys makes for a better ally than an enemy. He then gets word, though, that his daughter has arrived back from Dragonstone, and this is the first time he is hearing that Rhaenyra went there, and he is livid. He didn't want her going into that dangerous situation. He starts yelling at her for acting out, but as she puts it, I didn't think Sir Otto could get the dragon egg back on his own. He understands and he actually agrees with it, but what it comes down to is he can't afford to lose her, not after what happened to his wife. And that's when he finally gets to have an honest-to-God chat with his daughter about the grieving process. They both open up to each other, and it's much needed. He then brings up, though, the fact that he's going to have to marry again. He's not trying to replace her as heir, but the line is pretty vulnerable, and he has to replenish it. While she doesn't seem to be happy about the fact that he's marrying, she tells him, "You're the king, and your first duty is to the realm." But she probably figured that he was going to marry Corlys' daughter. And when he calls the council, he says, "I am going to marry, but it is to Alicent." It's a surprise to most of the room. A huge relief to Otto, who has been planning this for a while. And just as Lord Lionel had predicted, Corlys is pissed. But he's not the only one. Rhaenyra walks out, because it doesn't seem like she was planning for her father to marry her best friend. She had no idea the two even talked. She, however, just went to her room. Corlys went to go visit with Daemon. He calls Daemon to his house on Driftmark, and he starts pitching him on how they could work together. Corlys still has this problem with the Stepstones and the Crab Feeder. He knows that the Crab Feeder is backed by powerful people in the Free Cities who want to see Westeros weaken. The king doing nothing about any of this has allowed the Crab Feeder to accumulate strength. It's only a matter of time before the shipping lanes fall, and Corlys' house will be crippled. So if Daemon were to do something about the Crab Feeder, it would prove his worth to anybody who doubts it. And what Corlys is selling, Daemon appears to be buying. Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel and subscribing to my Patreon. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. If you left a comment, I don't get back to you. I usually don't check the comments unless they're like a super comment. Also, if you don't see the next video up on the end screen, not to worry, it'll be up in a day or two.